Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Esainayel heharim meyayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz alitin lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo yanum velo ishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikora yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha me'ata v'ad olam.
I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming, now and forever.
As we join together this morning, we stand shoulder to shoulder with you, Alan's family. And we each also pause for a while to sit with our own memories of Alan, to bring even more honor to his memory, and to celebrate his life. As I shared time with your family the other day, you shared the importance with me of the concept of Lador Vador, from generation to generation. It's a song that Alan knew well, as our Makor Shalom and Kol Ami communities know well. Lador Vador Nagid Godlecha. Lador Vador, we protect this chain. This morning we honor that tradition as one generation wraps its arms, its love, its comfort around another. And so we turn to the words of our Psalms that provide us with a generational link of comfort, the reminder of God's presence and abiding love.
Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever.
As I sat down to write this eulogy, I found myself thinking about how Alan was not only a master storyteller, he was also an unending storyteller. And even when someone had heard the story he was telling numerous times, it didn't stop him from telling it to you one more time. So I ask for your forgiveness up front, for I know that many of you will have heard each and every story shared today, probably multiple times before. As Sheila shared with me, Alan told and retold so many stories that they constantly quipped together that they needed to find new friends who would be fresh and captive audiences. And yet that doesn't make any one of these stories any less special, or any less significant, or any less missed. And as we spend time sharing memories and stories of Alan, we also offer our deepest condolences to Sheila, to Nancy, Matt, and Gavin. And I also want to mention that while Alan's brother Gerald could not be with us at the chapel due to health reasons, he and Alan's nieces and nephews and great-grandnieces and nephews are all watching on our live stream, along with many of Sheila's extended family and friends, all wrapping their love around you all as you navigate the path forward in these days ahead. When I joined Sheila and Nancy at Alan's bedside last week, and as we were sharing memories, Nancy, you mentioned that your father was the captain, your hero, who had a quiet confidence and a humble ego about him, and most importantly, that he was one of the kindest souls you've ever met, having inherited from his own parents a love and respect of all people. Alan never said a bad word about or to anyone, and he was always concerned about how other people were being treated. Perhaps a story you may not have heard before, although if some of you still have your old McCourt Shalom source bulletins, you can look at the front page of the March-April 2011 edition and find the story there too. It was an article about simple acts of kindness that I had written, and while I called Alan to tell him what I had seen and that I was writing the article about him, I never named him in the story. It was right before the High Holy Days of 2010, and a friend and I were driving through Philadelphia on our way to dinner. It had been raining much of the afternoon, and wind gusts were still quite strong. And finding ourselves in bumper-to-bumper traffic, we noticed a man in a wheelchair trying to make it across the street. However, because of how hard the wind was blowing, he was having an incredibly difficult time getting up enough speed to maneuver the chair up the ramp leading from the street onto the sidewalk. And as we watched the man struggling, we both quickly debated whether or not to get out of the car in the middle of traffic to help. And then we saw a pedestrian come out of nowhere, rush over, grab the handles of the wheelchair, and fighting the harsh wind, push the man safely onto the sidewalk. It was one of those beautiful moments when it feels like you've just witnessed holiness in action and caught a glimpse of humanity at its absolute best. And as we drove past the intersection, I realized that the pedestrian who had stopped to help while everyone else had just walked by was Alan. As Sheila and Nancy told me as we talked last week, Alan's card when he worked in sales said that while a good man is hard to find, you found a Goodman. How right he was. and the world was better for it. From his father, who was a cantor, Alan inherited a love of singing and music and a unique ability to lead while never seeking the spotlight at work. From his mother, Alan inherited the ability to be good at everything he tried. Alan majored in art and architecture, but as Sheila shared, he had had such impressive and world-renowned professors that Alan ultimately looked at their work and surmised that if he couldn't do it as brilliantly and talentedly as they could, then he'd simply move on to something else. And that was psychology, which helped him immensely when he fell into sales. As Sheila explained his career, he worked at Sweetheart Cup, and we ate a lot of ice cream. And then he moved to Nestle, and we ate a lot of candy bars. Alan was mechanically minded, though, and took a sales engineering position for a bookbinding company, and then moved on to Gilbreth Corporation, where he became a sales manager and ultimately VP of sales. His boss once commenting that had Alan not asked for a promotion from the position he was in, he would have simply been passed over it because of how quietly he did his work, never seeking recognition, but always treating clients like good friends as he traveled all over the world and helped grow the company to 10 times its value. As Alan used to say, you have to believe in what you're selling. A good salesman, after all, is really just selling themselves. But it was his family that mattered most to Alan, and his years of marriage to Sheila, whom he put on a pedestal. And as I shared a few years ago, as you celebrated your 55th anniversary then at McCourt Shalom, yours is a love story that actually began outside of Chicago at a young adult Jewish group. When Alan was elected president of the group, Sheila leaned over to a friend to say what a handsome guy he was. Her friend tried to convince Sheila not to fall for Alan. And in the words that Sheila shared then as we were talking, her friend said, he's a love 'em and leave 'em kind of guy. But Sheila didn't listen and quickly volunteered for a board position. For their first date, Alan took Sheila to a hockey game, and Sheila's family, not knowing much about hockey, gave Sheila a pair of binoculars to take with her in case she needed them to see the game. At some point that evening, as Alan was trying to help Sheila take the binoculars out of the case, he ended up knocking Sheila in the face with them so hard that a lump began to form on her forehead as the game went on, leading to some very concerned questions from Sheila's mother when they returned home. But just a few months later, you were engaged. Several months after that, you were married. And as you shared with me, when you moved to the East Coast and were looking for a house in the Philadelphia area, you settled on South Jersey and Point of Woods. As Sheila, you had commented, it's flat and ugly just like Chicago, and you knew you were home. Like Sheila, Alan dedicated much of his time to McCourt Shalom and later to Kol Ami, chairing committees and clubs, singing in the choir, serving in leadership, as part of the three tenors, participating in events, programs, and services, and as we all know, was simply a true mensch and a great guy. As a typical Aries, Alan was someone who would become intensely interested in something, be it sailing and boating, drinking fine wine with dinner, learning to play guitar, and would then just as quickly drop the interest and pick up something else. But Alan did really love to sail and to be out on the water, whether it was a sailboat or motorboat, and there are many memories made down the shore with family and friends. Alan also loved the arts, art museums and the opera, and of course, N.K. Thane Gallery in Haddonfield, which Alan and Sheila owned together. Sheila, you shared that you loved to travel together, both of you enjoying a taste of adventure and always up to find something, no matter what anyone else was doing. Time with family was also hugely important, as you and Alan would go to Nancy and Beth's swim meets, Barnum performances, and vocal concerts, and Alan was always there with love and support. As Nancy shared, it was what made Beth's passing so hard on Alan. as he always saw himself as a protector for his girls, and a part of his heart broke when Beth died, a loss unimaginable for any parent. As Nancy shared that in the days leading up to Alan's death, he would repeatedly say, "Sister," as Nancy was with him, and we pray that their souls have met once again. And over these final days, as you remained by Alan's bedside in a vigil that included singing and laughter, the holding of hands, the sharing of love and goodbyes, and fittingly the telling of stories, you gave Alan that final gift we truly wish for anyone. Alan knew that he was surrounded by those he loved and who loved him. And perhaps now he can take off his superhero cape for a bit and rest in the gentle knowing of a life well lived and well loved. To rest knowing that our world is a better place because a Goodman lived in it. Alan loved you deeply and took care of you. And in these last days and weeks and months, you cared for him, doing all you could to keep him safe and comfortable and peaceful, even when that was beyond challenging. You shared so much of life together and sang through so many moments of life together. You had the kind of love that so many others can only wish for, but that doesn't make these moments any easier. These moments of missing and figuring out how to once again feel him near you in the tender and more gentler world of spirit and memory. And so perhaps it is the words of Frank Sinatra who said it best. More than the greatest love the world has known, this is the love I give to you alone. More than the simple words I try to say, I only live to love you more each day. More than you'll ever know, my arms long to hold you so. My life will be in your keeping, waking, sleeping, laughing, weeping. Longer than always is a long, long time, but far beyond forever, you're going to be mine. I know I've never lived before, and my heart is very sure no one else could love you more. We now call upon Stuart Alprin to share some remarks as one of Alan's dear friends.
Mary Lee and I moved to this community in 1965 with our 6-month-old daughter, Elise, who grew up a little bit. We bought a cute split-level house in Kingston Estates. We loved that house, but when Judy came along a few years later and it became a bit too small, we moved to a brand new colonial in Point of Woods. That was in the year 1973. 1973 had its momentous happenings. The Yom Kippur War, the Watergate scandal, our new house, of course, and when we first met Alan and Sheila. We met over the fence that divided our two backyards. It was love at first sight. How could you not love two people who exuded charm, intelligence, and commitment, all at the same time? Our lives intertwined. Soon we became business partners when Mary Lee and Sheila bought the Red Apple Card and Gift Store. We all became founders of Congregation McCaw Shalom. And of course, everyone but me joined the choir. Just an aside, the rabbi mentioned it. Most of you know that Alan had a beautiful voice, but most likely it was inherited from his dad, who was a renowned cantor. Our lives continued to intertwine. We became more than friends. We became family. Together we shared holiday celebrations and more. We laughed together, and when family crises arose, we cried together. Sailing on the bay with Captain Al at the helm were some of the most memorable occasions for my kids and later for their kids. Alan was a truly special man, a man who cared for others, a man with a strong identification with and loyalty to his adopted country, a man who his friends could count on in good times or bad, a man who always had a nice word to say, along with an Alanism, a cute but corny joke to tell. But above it all, Alan was a family man. His love for his family had no bounds. Sheila, the love of his life, Beth, of blessed memory, Nancy and Matt, and of course, for the special man in his life, Gavin. So, it is with deep and profound sadness that I speak today at Alan's passing. But the sadness gives way to the privilege I feel in being able to share this snapshot of this wonderful, wonderful man. Whether it was as a husband, a father, a grandfather, a businessman, or friend, Alan always gave it his all. He was a true mensch. You know, I like Leo Roston's definition of that word, mensch. When he described in his book, The Joys of Yiddish, he said, a mensch is someone who would to admire, to emulate, someone of noble character. In expounding on the meaning of heaven, and impressed by Roston's definition, Guy Kawasaki, also a well-known author, put forth this theory. He said, I have a theory that heaven is like a three-class Boeing 777. You can sit in a narrow seat that doesn't recline, eat chicken like substance is subs, next to a screaming baby, or you can sit in a slightly wider seat and eat a beef-like substance in business class. But the goal is to spend eternity in first class. Here, your seat reclines completely. There's a power outlet, a video player, a wireless internet, and noise-canceling headphones. But in heaven, you cannot buy your way into first class, nor can you use frequent flyer miles. The only way to earn an upgrade is to be a mensch. I don't know if there is a heaven, but if there is, Alan has earned an upgrade because no one fits the definition of mensch better than our Alan, and we will all miss him.
Now call upon Nancy, Alan's daughter.
Thank you for coming today to honor and pay your respects to my hero, a good man, Captain Al, Big Al, Alkie, Allie, Alan, or simply Dad. Growing up, my dad was the coolest, always taking us on adventures, skiing, sailing, our trips to visit Grandma and Grandpa in Florida, to name a few. He did it with pleasure, and the only time he ever raised his voice was if my sister and I were fighting. If we dared to be disrespectful to our mom, watch out. He adored her and always put Mom on a pedestal. Dad taught us what true love and respect for a partner meant by being an incredible husband to our mom for 60 years. He would do almost anything she wanted to make her happy, even let her bribe him to quit smoking cigarettes, cigars, his beloved pipe collection, in order to get that new cool sports car or luxury vehicle. But He really wanted to just make Mom happy, and he sure did. But the cabbage soup diet, Mom? Really? That was pushing it. Our best childhood memories were made sailing on the Barnegat and Chesapeake Bays. We entertained family and many friends. We always knew it was a good or bad day based upon how many times Dad used the S word. And if it was a really bad day, an occasional F word popped out, and I could hear Mom say, "Alan!" He loved to be the captain at the helm of his boat, and we loved participating in his hobby with him. Dad often traveled for weeks at a time for business around the country and internationally as the VP of sales for a successful packaging company. Upon his return, he always brought home treats for his little girls, and boy, did he love to tease us. Tickles, wrestling, tons of hugs, corny jokes, goofy stories. My dad was just fun and funny. Gavin came along 15 years ago, and he became the clear favorite. No more arguing between Beth and me. Gavin was the winner, and we both agreed that was okay. My two Aries had the best time going to baseball games and hockey games, having to catch in the backyard, watching sports, attending shows, and just hanging out. Grandpa was one of his favorite titles, and he was so proud of Gavin. Whether he was watching him play baseball, travel, soccer, become a bar mitzvah, doing well in school, or just being a kind soul, Gavin was perfect in his eyes, and in fact, he would often say, "I can see Gavin becoming the first Jewish president one day." The past couple of years became more challenging, but Dad's love and devotion to family never wavered. The last moments of his beautiful life, Mom and I spent 6 days with him in comfort care. We moved in, and we never left his side. We listened to Billy Joel, his favorite. We sang songs. We told stories to him. We laughed. We cried a little. We held hands, and we said everything that needed to be said. He felt our love, and we told him it was okay to be with Beth. In true Alan Goodman style, he waited until Mom and I closed our eyes for just a little to spare us seeing him take his last breath, because that's what heroes do. As the mug that Gavin gave him says, "Grandpa, not all superheroes wear capes. Dad, you are forever our hero, and we love you."
Hello. My name is Matt Schiff, Nancy's husband, whom some of you may or may not know. Then again, if you're a friend of Nancy's on Facebook, you pretty much know everything about me that you need to know through her posts, probably. What you don't know, though, is that I truly did love and respected Alan in the short time that I knew him. He and I both loved sailing, and apparently had more in common than just sailing and his daughter. I found this out when I asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, and with his response, which was absolutely terrific, he said, "I would love to call you my son." As a way to celebrate and get our families together for the first time, I thought it would be good to bring everybody down to Philadelphia. So the six of us went to an opera, Rigoletto. Little did I know it was Alan's favorite. That wasn't until after we went, and he told me all about it. I had been introduced to opera at a young age by my parents, and it couldn't have been a better night. Anyway, Sheila has asked that I read you her memories. And with that, let me switch over. And I'm also going to say that in true Alan fashion and Sheila, we may hear some stories again that you will love, and that I will do my best to keep it in Sheila's voice, since there are two different ways I could read this, but it is wonderful, and I hope you appreciate it. Now, Shakespearean style. When Alan Goodman stood to receive the office of president of a young adult group forming at Park Synagogue in Chicago, I fell in love at first sight. Who is this handsome guy? I asked Lee, a fellow teacher who had brought me. Oh, it's the cantor's son. I'll love him and leave him, she replied. When a volunteer to serve as secretary was needed, I volunteered immediately, and our story began. Alan would pass my house in Skokie and on his way home from work and say hello, as I was always outside trying to get my 1965 Plymouth started. He was so handsome, Alan asked you out. Oh, has that handsome Alan asked you out yet? My college buddy Corky called to ask. Actually, he's here with his friend Dick, who is a psychologist in need of subjects to take a test for his class. And apparently they're giving me an IQ test. Well, exclaimed Corky, fussy, fussy, when Alan offered to drive me to a group ice skating party, but never came back to pick me up. I started to cry. My dad, who had never offered a kind word for anyone I dated, consoled me and said, I don't think Alan is the kind of person who would ever deliberately hurt you. A phone call later, and Alan apologized and drove from the rink to get me. How right my dad was about him. Valentine's Day was coming, and I started to receive a kid's Valentine every day with an even cornier poem on it signed, Your Shy Admirer. I didn't mention them until Alan came with flowers and candy on Valentine's Day. How could you not love such a romantic and creative man? I sure did, and we were engaged in 3 months and sang duets to the guitar at our engagement party. My wonderful mother-in-law enthused, I picture you two singing together for all of your lives. And that actually became true. We were married on December 27th with Alan's Toronto family, our Columbus, Ohio, and Chicago families, and my 5th grade students there for the ceremony. A foot of snow had fallen, and Alan walked to synagogue the day before, literally in the footsteps of his 96-year-old Zadie, on his talented father, and with his much-loved younger brother Jerry, the good men of the Goodman family. Alan's good job took us and baby Beth to Philadelphia, where we knew not a soul. We put down roots in Cherry Hill, joined McCoy Shalom, where we made dear friends. At the synagogue, at his new company, Gilbreth Corporation, Alan rose to leadership through ability, dedication, and kindness. He also got to exercise his love of comedy at performances of the Shrink Neck routine with Buddy Bob. When Gilbreth was sold, Alan thrived as owner of N.K. Thane, an American craft and fine art gallery in Haddonfield. His love of art, he had originally majored in art and architecture at Southern Illinois University, combined with his love of people and of sharing the stories of the art and artists, were the perfect combination that made him so successful. When Alan's retirement from the gallery lasted only 2 weeks, he found a third career as a realtor with Weichert and Cherry Hill, helping many friends from his stock, quote, really dining club, the Alta Cockers, to sell their homes and find new ones. Alta Stockers. And they're cockers, too. Freudian slip. But Alan's favorite job was as a proud and loving father and grandfather to our daughters and his grandson, Gavin. He went to every swim meet or musical performance in which his girls participated. He took the family to Florida every year to see their grandparents, to Chicago to see their other grandparents, and his brother Jerry, Nita, and the kids and grandkids, and to Columbus and Toronto events with aunts, uncles, and cousins. Alan sent the girls to camp and on trips to Europe or Israel to expand their horizons, saw that they had the college educations and weddings that they wanted, and once even schlepped all of their possessions to New York on the same day, moving both of the kids in, one on the east side and one on the west side. Gavin's bar mitzvah was a highlight of his life, and when he presented a talit to him on the bima was the crowning moment. Grandpa loved to watch Gavin play soccer, baseball, and was raving about his new golf skills. An athlete like Grandpa, he also encouraged Gavin to achieve in school with the time-honored approach of bribing him to get good grades, which he now seeks all on his own. We all loved and laughed at Alan's typical Aries passions. He became a wine snob, then switched to beer. He had 50 pipes, then quit tobacco. He studied the cosmos, became a monitor at OLLI, Temple's lifelong learning institute, had a watch collection, then only wore his Apple Watch. But his passion for boating was his longest obsession. We had 3 ever larger sailboats over 20 years, then at the Jersey Shore, 3 ever larger motorboats. He loved being Captain Al. How lucky have I been to share Alan's passion for life, his curiosity, his sense of humor, his love for art and music, his kindness and genuine desire to help others, his gentleness and devotion to his family and friends, his support of everything I wanted to try, his pride in everything I was able to achieve. All these for 60 years, which flew by in an instant. How he would have loved to thank Rabbi Frankel and Cantor Hochman for this beautiful service, to schmooze and joke with family and friends, and thank everyone for coming, to show his pride in our amazing and supportive Nancy, our caring, helpful son-in-law Matt, our loving and so much fun Gavin, and to say to me, as he did years ago, when I first told him I loved him, "Me too, Yusha. Me too, you."
Lechila, to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha, to a place you do not know. Lechila, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lechila. And I shall make your name great. Lech lecha, and all shall praise your name. Lechila. לשמחת חיים, לשמחת חיים, לשמחת חיים, לכי לך. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lechi lach.
I held a party the other week, and grief came. She wasn't invited, but she came anyway, barged her way in through the door, and settled down like she was here to stay. And then she introduced me to the friends she brought with her. Fear and frustration, guilt and hopelessness. And they sang in the loudest voices, took up space in every corner of the room, and spoke over anyone else who tried to talk. They made it messy and loud and uncomfortable. But finally they left. And long afterwards, when I was all alone, I realized there was still someone here, quietly cleaning up after the rest. I asked who she was, and she told me love. And I assumed that's why she looked familiar, because I had met her before. Or perhaps she said it's because I've been here the whole time. And I was confused then because I hadn't seen her all evening. But when I looked more closely, when I looked in her eyes, I realized quietly that love had been there all the time. She'd just been dressed as grief. I invite you to please rise for our memorial chant of El Malei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, Im Kiroshim Utehorim, Kizoar Arakia, Masirim, Et Nishmat Avraham, Ben Ruven Vegetal, Shehalach Leolamo, Baal Rachamim, Yasti Rechu Beseter Knafav, Leolamim, Vitror Bitror Achaim, Et Nishmato, Adonai, Unachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Alan, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and in the shadow of your wings. Let his soul always be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. Please be seated. Interment will follow our chapel service this afternoon at Locustwood Memorial Park. Following interment, Sheila and her family invite you to join them for a lunch celebrating Alan's life in the community room of the Kennedy House apartment building in Philadelphia.